Here, you kill him. Okay, one of the things we need to talk about is the behavioral characteristics of a dog so that you guys will understand how to train properly. The first principle I'd like to talk about is a dog is an amoral creature. It doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, and it never will, because that's like an abstract thought. And thought's the key word here. A dog can't think, so he'll never be moral. But what he can do is he can remember extremely well, and he can decide. And because of that fact, that leads us into how you need to train one. And so the best example I know of that is to show you a piece of chain here. Say the length of this chain is a task, and every one of these links in that chain is a subtask. So in other words, you have to teach an animal how to do something one day, he remembers it, and then you take a subsequent action and chain it over the thing you taught him the day before, and so on and so forth until you've completed the length of the chain, or in other words, made a task. And so that's basic principles of how and why that you train the way that you do. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is creating a training environment. It's extremely important that you do this from the beginning. Before you even bring your puppy home, you need to be thinking about how that you're going to take care of it. And I recommend that a guy build him a kennel with a concrete floor in it. And basically got a broom finish so the dog won't slide around on it, and put a 1/4-inch pinch for a running foot. The kennel dimensions need to be 16 by 6 by 4. 4 foot wide, 16 foot long, and 6 feet high. The reason for that is so the dog will run back and forth instead of running in circles. If you put him in a square pen, he's going to start running in circles, which is a real detrimental thing for a retriever dog to do. So, and if he's in a 16-foot run, he'll adequately exercise himself all his life if you never took him out of there. So get him set up right with a good kennel to begin with. The kennel itself is a training tool. And the way you need to look at it is you're always controlling the dog's environment and his life. He doesn't know anything except what we want him to know. He doesn't gain any benefit from in the company of other dogs for any length of time. He doesn't gain any benefit from being exposed to things that we don't necessarily want him to know. So that's why that we use kennels as actually a training tool. If the dog comes out of the kennel and you're fooling with him once a day, he starts looking forward to being trained. If he's out running loose out in the backyard all the time, tearing up the rose bushes and what have you, then you come over there and start trying to teach him to do something, he's not nearly as interested in it. So, that's why kennels are good. Creating this training environment, we need to talk about how you treat the dog and what's going on in this maturation process that is going through as a puppy. And the first thing that you need to talk about is socialization. And socialization means that a dog is at ease with the world. So that means that you have to expose him to as many different places as you possibly can so that nothing spooks him. So in other words, he does come in the house and run across the linoleum floor and the rug and knows what the kids are, and take him to the store in your pickup, let him check all that out, and take him to the field a lot so that he's at ease in any kind of place that you put him in. So in other words, you're not creating any kind of neuroses, he's been exposed to it. That's what socialization is. Bonding is another natural process that they go through, but it doesn't relate to socialization. Bonding is where the dog becomes attached to a person, another animal, or an object. If you leave a puppy in by itself, heck, the darn thing will bond with its water bucket. It's going to do it. And this socialization process and this bonding process are strongest when the puppy's somewhere between 8 and 9 weeks old to about 16 weeks of age. So he needs a lot of human contact and very little dog contact, especially during that period of time, so that he bonds with humans, not other dogs. I guess a couple of questions that beg to be answered are when to train and how often. The best time to train is at daylight and dark. In other words, sunrise, sunset. And always train on a puppy on an empty stomach. If he's full, he's not going to pay attention nearly as much. He's going to get sleepy on you. How much to train, the best way to explain that is go out there with a particular subtask goal in mind that you're trying to teach, being aware that you might have to augment your plans at any time. But still, you go out there and try to teach a puppy a subtask, and when he's learned it by showing you that he's done two or three repetitions properly, honor that and quit. That's a training session. And as time goes by, what you'll start seeing happen is the puppy's ability to concentrate will extend for longer periods of time so that you can teach him more subtasks in a training sequence. But still, there always comes a time when the little guy's cup is full and you need to learn how to recognize that and quit before it happens. When you're training an animal, basically what you're doing is teaching it how to move. All work is broken down into a series of movements. In the case of your little retriever dog, the movements it takes to get his work done are go get a duck, bring it back, and sit down. In essence, that's all he does do. When we present these movements to the dog, we present them in straight line patterns back and forth because that's the most efficient way to get a duck picked up. We've also got to teach the puppy words associated with these movements. Go get it, bring it back, and sit down. So that later on in training, we can gain control of those movements and therefore gain control of the dog. This curriculum ought to start when the puppy's about 10 weeks old. Let him come home for a couple of weeks and get used to his new environment and figure out what his name is, and then start this curriculum off, and it should last till he's about 6 months old or he turns into an adolescent. We're going to use food rewards as a positive motive to be able to get the dog to respond to these words. There are several good reasons why we're using food to teach the puppy the words associated with his movements. Number one is its primary motivator. A dog eats to live and it lives to eat. You can gain his attention for longer periods of time and so therefore increase his ability to be able to concentrate. You can get quick responses to the words associated with the movements and so therefore you can maintain straighter lines. But most importantly, you're able to draw comparisons. Good trainers are able to draw clear-cut comparisons to their students, and food accomplishes that. So in other words, if the dog sits when you tell it to, it gets fed. If you tell the dog to sit and it doesn't get fed. So that's a real clear-cut comparison. As we go through this curriculum, I'm going to show you how to get the puppy to respond to words with food and develop his desire to retrieve. Once his level of understanding of words has grown and then we've developed his desire to retrieve into a frenzy, we're going to start phasing out food rewards and get the dog to respond to these words because we'll let it fetch. During this teaching process, the dog is always going to get what he wants. That's what motivates him to want to learn and work.